Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. Get us oriented to our conversation. Here we go. Tonight we'll be discussing community workplaces. It's transforming workplaces because I know I don't have to tell this group that work is not working for many people in our community. And so we have the privilege of being able to hear from community leaders here in Vermont, both in the for-profit and not-for-profit space, folks who have been thinking about how to transform their workplaces to like really intentionally be more neuro-inclusive. And we'll hear about what they've been doing and how it's been going. Before we begin, closed captions are enabled. You just have to toggle them on if you'd like to use it. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can also choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. So if you're new to Brain Club, just to give you a quick orientation, Brain Club is a place where we all come together to learn and unlearn things that no longer serve us, that get in the way of this being a world that works for everyone. And so this is a program for neurodivergent people, people who support neurodivergent people, whether that be friends, family, professionals, anyone who's exploring their neuro identity, and really anyone with any type of brain who wants to learn more about neuro-inclusive culture. If you're new to All Brains Belong, we're a nonprofit here in Montpelier, Vermont, with the idea of improving the health and belonging of people with all types of brains. And we do that through medical care, social connection, employment support, and community education like this. So you are invited to be part of the ABB community, and we're really glad you're here. Brain Club is our weekly education program for purposes of, oh, that's awesome, Brian. Hi, welcome. Brain Club is where we demonstrate our approach to neuro-inclusive culture for purposes of shifting broader community awareness about the issues of concern and importance to neurodivergent people in our community, so as to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world. And then, therefore, we hope that you'll take what you learn here forward, and that's how culture change happens. Brain Club is, we're here to provide education. This is an education program, and so it's not the right place for giving medical advice or addressing personal medical questions or medical situation. We have other programs for that, but this one is for education purposes only. It's a place where we model neuro-inclusive culture and new ways of being in community through community panels like tonight, guest speakers, and book chats. It's not a support group, so this is not the right place to process individual emotional experiences. This is a way to better understand the experiences of our presenters, and for many, this is a way to feel less alone. But it's not the right place for addressing individualized needs or requests. You will hear, maybe this will happen tonight. It will certainly happen periodically throughout Brain Club, you'll hear us criticize systems that make it difficult for people to get their needs met. And what you will hear tonight is bright spotting alternatives. But this is not the right place to criticize individuals or groups of people. You are welcome to use the chat while we watch our pre-recorded panel. And so that's the chat bubble. We just ask that if you are going to use the chat, out of respect for the presenters, we ask that you limit your use of the chat to be directly about the content of the panel. For example, you can share what a panelist says impacts you, or validate others' comments, or certainly you can ask questions anytime and staff will answer. We just ask that if you're going to use the chat, please use the big box only instead of the reply threads, because that makes the chat bounce up and down and makes it hard for some brains to read. There are multiple right ways to participate. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Feel free to do what needs doing, walk, move, fidget, stim, eat, take breaks, whatever else needs doing. And if there is anything that you need, let us know. We invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like. You may pick up some new words or concepts, and if there's anything that is new and unfamiliar, you can feel free to ask in the chat, and we can provide some clarity. And as we listen to our panelists, I invite you to think about how what they're talking about connects to your life. If it's your first time at Brain Club, keep coming back. It might take a few rounds to get a sense for things. Lizzie's going to put some logistics questions in the chat for some questions that come up sometimes at the beginning of Brain Club. All right, so first, a big thank you to North Country Federal Credit Union for sponsoring today's Brain Club. And we'll get to actually hear from Jeff Smith from North Country next week on next week's panel. But we're really grateful for North Country support. We're also very grateful to all of you who support Brain Club and make it possible for us to produce this content week after week so that we can all come together and reimagine community. What tonight will look like, we're going to watch a pre-recorded panel. The recording will run about 32 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions and discussion. All month long in November, we're talking about transformation. Last week, we talked about transforming identity. Now we move that to workplaces, then to communities, then systems. They build on each other week after week. So we're grateful that you're all here with us. The thing about employment is that it's not going well for a lot of members of our community. What we know, the literature tells us that autistic adults have a 2.5 to 8 times increased risk of being unemployed or underemployed, and that is across all levels of education. 75% of ADHDers experience employment-related challenges, and we know that employment and health are related to each other in both directions. There are some specific elements of neuro-inclusive workplaces, and some of the things that you'll hear our panelists talk about tonight relate to some of these things. But a lot of workplaces have not thought about these things. And so we are really pleased to be able to hear from employers and organizational leaders who have been thinking about designing neuro-inclusive workplaces and to hear their practical strategies for doing so. The big picture of neuro-inclusive employment, it's not to overly simplify, but like really it is pretty simple. Normalize neurodiversity, that is, we all have different brains, and given that we all have different brains, we all have different needs. And so let's normalize that different people have different needs. So let's offer multiple different ways to participate. That's it. That's neuro-inclusive employment. That's the lens through which approaching everything in a workplace is going to result in, leaps and bounds toward neuroinclusion. And of course, because different brains have different needs, it is inevitable that those needs are going to conflict from time to time. We call that conflicting access needs. It's not that one person's needs matter more than another person's needs. It's just we have to have a plan for negotiating that. So without further ado, I'll introduce our panelists, Liz Schlegel and Ashley Roberts from The Alchemist, Sheila Linton from the Root Social Justice Center, Emily Grenier from Encore Renewable Energy, and Claire Whitaker from Turtle Fur. Let me reshare with sound. There we go. What has this journey been like for you?
So I'm Ashley. I'm with The Alchemist. I've been with the company a really long time through its youth to its present state. And this sort of thought process for inclusive employment, it's just brought a nice pause element that it's easy to step through, that we acknowledge more than we used to.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Anybody want to go next?
Sure. I'm Emily Grenier, and I'm the head of HR at Encore Renewable Energy. And when I joined, I realized already how involved Encore was in thinking about neurodiversity within the workplace. And I would say that to echo a little bit of what Ashley said, I think the more that we understand it and the more that we know how prevalent it is, the easier it is to sort of think more expansively around how do we support our team members and how do we, make things more accessible for folks so that everyone can do their best work. So I think a lot of it is just the fact that, we're talking more broadly about it and we're learning more and we're understanding what it really means. And that gives us a lot to work with.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that like what you just said about people doing their best work, that's really what this is about. When you can show up as your full self, regardless of how your brain works or other aspects of your identity, you can just show up and do your best work. And I think that I love hearing that. Thank you. Who do you want to go next?
I'll go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Sheila Linton. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Root Social Justice Center. The Root is located in Southern Vermont, and we are an all BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color-led racial justice organization centering Blackness. And we prioritize BIPOC people in their communities by shifting our resources to BIPOC for leadership connection, healing, education, and the arts. And we support BIPOC-led racial justice movement work. And so within my work, we are fortunate to have an all staff of color and work and serve. Our priorities is to work and serve our communities of color. And sometimes within our own communities and our intersectionalities, there's so many intersectionalities that we all hold. And because race is a big one in which our organization holds, not only for ourselves, who in the way we identify, but in what we are experiencing in the world and what we're doing. And so often the intersectionalities of ourselves get lost. Certain pieces of us can get lost. And one of those pieces can be how our brains work. And so, as we're dealing with all these other intersectionalities of ourselves within our Black and brownness, we're recognizing that there are more intersectionalities that we also need to focus on and prioritize as well. And one of those is how do our brains really work? And what does that mean, not only as maybe a not a generalization, but a foundational understanding, but also what does that mean directly for the individual? And so what we found at the Root was that we had been already thinking and applying and doing so much of this, but needing to really and wanting to really work with more individuals who are more had that more direct experience, that more expertise, that language, those tools and those resources. And so, like Emily said, for the Root, it's helped us to understand ourselves more as a staff and really be able to grow and be like, oh, kind of some aha moments, some kind of, oh yeah, that makes sense moments, some of those like, oh, we could be doing better moments. But it also is not just internal for us as staff, of course, those tools then that we are able to apply for ourselves and give ourselves those gifts, we're able to extend that out to our participants and to our community as a whole and understand what does that mean like for programming? What does that mean for how we greet people or interact with our communities and our participants within our programming and within our organization as a whole? So it's been a great way for us to both internally have a better understanding of neurodiversity and the spectrum of that, but also how do we give that back to our community as a gift as well?
Oh, it is so beautiful. Thank you, Sheila. I think that that theme of if I understand myself better as a leader, and I empower my staff, my team to understand themselves better, then now everyone can best show up for the people we're serving. Love that. Thank you. Anybody want to go next?
Hi, my name's Claire. Hi, Mel, and everybody. I work for Turtle Fur. We create hats and headwear and warm winter gear out in Morrisville. Um, I am the designer there, and I also lead the DEI team. And we've had Mel come in several times and do talks because we do monthly coffee chats. And Mel's everyone's favorite also. Everyone's like, we could just listen to Mel for hours. So thanks for being such a great presenter. And I feel like as a company, we have done a lot of internal work. Like I think every time Mel talks, we all really take a good look inside ourselves, and people are being a little more open about being neurodivergent. Like my boss is an ADDer, a bunch of people are ADDers. There's folks on the spectrum, and it's been a lot easier to like kind of communicate about what we need to communicate with each other. Like someone might need a Teams message just to let them know they got an email or something like that. So we're sort of kind of adopting Mel's menu style thing, like what do you need? And we sort of integrated that into our reviews this year. And I think in general, like the team I work with, we've been really good about understanding each other's work needs, like the way that one of my coworkers can like lock into a project and I need like only an hour here and then a little tea break, so we've done a lot of work as a team on the design end as well. So kind of to make a long answer to a short question, but
I love those examples. I think those are really helpful because whether someone is neurodivergent or identifies as neurodivergent or not, we all do our work differently and we all need different things. And I think that, that's, I think, another theme of just giving some language and some transparency of that.
And I'll go briefly. I'm Liz Schlegel from The Alchemist. I run the philanthropic side of our work and the community outreach. And, Ashley and I were discussing this, just what a difference it's made for us, especially as we look at the different aspects of our business, right? We are a manufacturing business, we are a hospitality business, and we are a charity, right? And so we kind of have all these things that are part of our fairly small, Vermont business. And to try to just be like, there's all these different facets. Like one of the things we say now is everybody's brain works different. Stop assuming someone will know what you mean when you say, go to that end of the parking lot, right? Like try to think of all the different ways somebody could get that wrong. And then also, I look at little things like people understand now that there are places in the, retail brewery, right? Like where the music is really loud. And they know now to direct customers like loud music is over here. If you want quiet over here, I don't think like before we worked with you, Dr. Mel, like people would have really gotten that as this is part of our hosting, is knowing that people are going to be comfortable in different ways and not just, oh, those boomers, they can't handle the music, right? So being able to shift kind of the facet and keep saying somebody might be uncomfortable with this. We can't always accommodate their every need, but being able to kind of, here's the continuum of ways we can support that, right? And in different ways, in a bunch of different settings, whether it's what do we have in the fridge at work for snacks, or how do we support our customers, or how do we work with our partners, right? We work with organizations who come in and table, the folks who receive our tips. There's folks who, tabling is not fun for them. They're very, and I'm like, it's optional. You don't have to do this. Let's take the pressure off for people where, that is just feels like a really big burden. Again, we would not have thought like that a couple of years ago. So you have really changed our thinking and we're really grateful for that.
Oh, I'm really grateful to hear about that. I think the theme that stands out about what you shared is the idea of the menu, right? And similar to as Claire shared around like, yep, all our brains work differently, so we just have multiple different options of things. It doesn't have to be a very big, doesn't have to be a big deal. Love that. I'm curious if anybody has any other examples of concrete changes you've made following your neurodiversity training.
So things are slow, right? Or sometimes it takes things a while to do things. But what was really great that I really liked about our training was the access to language. So a lot of us had embodied a lot of these values, some of these tools of way of being and how we operate, but we didn't necessarily have the language. We didn't necessarily have the menu, and we didn't necessarily have as many tools in our backpack. So with that, creating even within our handbook, the idea is to curate working on a section in the handbook that speaks more to neurodiversity so that it's not an add-on within our organization or something that you just put in because, oh, a person we noticed was neurodivergent, but more like a value-based organizational kind of tool to be like, hey, we know that everybody comes as they come, and when people do, this is how we would like to support, embody, or work with people. And so that is really exciting to start working on those on sort of a higher level within our organization. But what also has been really great is supporting programming and making sure that we have like an agenda for our staff meetings and things like that. And so now we have things that we do and it just naturally comes up within that. And we talk about these things. And so it's a staple. It's again, not an add on. And something I really love is supporting programming. We've been fortunate enough to where one of our staff members, we do what we would call, I guess, peer run programs and or most impacted led programming. So the people who are part of those communities or most impacted by those communities are leading that programming. And so we are fortunate enough to have many neurodiverse people on our team, but one in particular who is also raising a child who has autism. And so we were able to have a new program within our organization called SYNC, which is supporting young children of neurodiversity, and really be able to support. I was able to support that colleague more, and being able to support her vision for that program, both as a peer and as somebody who has a household with neurodiverse folks, and what that meant for our organization. We've always wanted to stem out in that way, and to be able to have some programming that encompassed these conversations and these experiences. And now I think it kind of made it more seamless for us to be able to provide those spaces with the tools and options and language that we've been provided. So thank you, Mel.
Oh, I love that because and since I know about some of the stories of creation of your other programs, this feels so aligned with you have an individual who you are supporting like their path to self-actualization and that empowerment aspect. And it's really awesome to hear about how, you know, culture, language, like some of these kinds of shifts can support that journey of supporting a staff member toward, you know, what we would really want for any staff member. We'd want a self-actualized, engaged, motivated, you know, empowered team. Thank you, Sheila. Anybody else want to share any other examples of concrete changes that you've made since your training?
Sure. So we have something that we use here called our communications paradigm, and it was rooted in a sense of trying to create some norms, some cultural norms within the workplace around communication. So, like most things, best of intentions, right? You know, we want to sort of provide some structure around how we all engage and interact, and the more that we start learning again and new people come on board and they're like, this isn't working for me, and so we start to hear little bits about like, I don't really work like that, or like, what happens if I actually really need X, Y, and Z? And so what we're trying to do now is sort of, again, more about creating space for there to be a couple of right ways to be able to do the thing, but still have us existing within a common framework. There's commonalities, there's common expectations that we can all share, but how each of us do those things, I think we're trying to really ensure that there is, that there's enough allowance for people who maybe, get their burst of energy. Some of us don't work in steady state flows, right? Some of us have these bursts, and when the bursts come, like, that's when we do our best work. And so, like, asking me to only, respond to emails within 9 to 5 is not going to work, right? And so just sort of recognizing that there's a lot of different ways that we all work. And so again, the framing of the communications paradigm is really great. I do like the idea of grounding us all in some common language and common ideas, but it's about having the flexibility within that framework for, again, coming back for everyone doing their best work.
Totally. And I think what also stands out to me about that example is you've got a culture where people can give feedback, where people can say, that's not working for me. And so I think that, that's really an invitation to other leaders to be thinking about what am I doing to create that kind of culture? Because you don't know that you need to make a shift unless you hear from the people.
Yeah, and I will say that I do think that that's one of the things that we do pretty well here. And I've always said that, even if you have 4 people with ADHD, right, it looks different with everyone. There's never going to be a one size fits all solution. And so, trusting that individuals know what works best for them and allowing that interactive dialogue to happen where we can say, okay, well, this is label or not, it's right. This is what I need to be able to do the work and how I need to do it, and trying to come up with a solution that works for the business and the individual is really sort of the approach that we try to take in all of these situations.
Love that. Thank you, Emily. Anybody else want to share any examples?
One of the big ways is in terms of like training materials and informational materials, right? Like we're a relatively small business, we're family owned, right? And we're very much an in-person, right, on site, whether you're making the beer, right? Like it's not, there's only a couple of people who can work remotely with what we do. And so it is a lot about, there's going to be a calendar on the wall, and there's going to be a calendar electronically, and there's going to be, multiple ways of communicating. This is who's working on X. This is what is happening here, right? Like we have really tried to up our game, both in terms of how we share, kind of here's events going on, here's how we're solving all the potential things related to events, but then also regular training around, this is our culture and how we like to be in the world, right? Like in person and the handbook, and just reinforcing all the time things that I think possibly we took for granted a little more around, oh, people just pick this up from swimming in our pond. And now we're like, we're going to make it explicit, right? That here's what we expect around, don't assume that because you told Joe once how to clean, some special piece of equipment, that you shouldn't also write it down and tape that to the piece of equipment, right? Like just stop assuming, right? Those of us who've been here for longer, and have internalized a lot of stuff, somebody can't necessarily walk in and pick all that up at once. So we've changed our ways, for sure. I mean, I hope it's helping people, but we think a lot more now about how we're going to make sure somebody has every way to access this piece of information.
I love that because, like when we think about communication, it's not just like how you say something, it's in what format are you delivering it. And so in your example of when we're training someone, that we're not just telling them something, it's that we're creating, some simple visual support. Probably is not a huge extra time commitment, and you can have a better chance at having your information actually being received.
And I would say, to go along with that, the shift within the people to have the patience to do that has changed with that understanding. Sometimes we all need reminders because we're humans, but it's not as pushed back on as it once was, because you get that like, oh, right, our brains do work differently. How can I reframe what I'm saying and presenting in a way that it's going to work for their workflow as well? And I think we've done a nice job of integrating that in from all aspects of employees. Everyone takes that pause to figure out what they're saying that's not working and how they could say it in a different, maybe even more kinder way to help the person that's not receiving the full information.
Well, that's so interesting. Have you seen any impact on just conflict between employees?
We're a manufacturing business, so many people strive off of efficiency, and that's not always how people's brains work. And so when one person thinks efficiency is the only way, to take that minute and be like, okay, you've presented a lot of information about how this other person needs to do their job, but it's very scattered. It's not together. Can we bring it together? And that will be more efficient for that person's job. And you will have that itch scratched as well. But we do have the usual gripes and complaints. And what do I do when this person isn't, hearing what I'm saying? And that's a nice redirect. And no one ever is like, I can't do it that way. They're like, oh, right. Can you help me reframe this? And that's key, I think, for us.
I love what everybody has said so far. It's all also very like inspiring and thought-provoking. So I just want to thank everyone else who's speaking. And I also love what you just said, Ashley, about efficiency, because just thinking about my job in general, like because I do a lot of creative work, sometimes people just want like the design here now fast, and I need some time to noodle on things because that's the way it goes. So it's nice to hear you say that it doesn't always have to be right here, right now. You know, we live in this culture that we're supposed to have the answer immediately, and we rush, and sometimes thinking things through can be really, really helpful. Um, and also to just answer your questions, Mel, is I was thinking a lot about just the way things have changed within my team. On my team in general, we have started like weekly check-ins for the three of us. We're a really small team, and we just go over the work we're doing for the week and, how it's going to interact with each other and the way we want to give and receive and let people know when we're done or what our status is. So that kind of gets us all on the same wavelength. And then there's been a few processes that we've adjusted, and I know I mentioned this in the first statement, but for example, and I've talked to Mel about this before, is patterns. So like I can look at patterns for an hour a day, but my boss can look at them for 8 hours straight. So I'll come to her with a collection of patterns. She'll review it. And instead of me sitting with her like I did the first year while she scrolls, I can't do that. But she'll scroll on her own, and then I'll fill in the gaps, and then we'll re-meet. So no one gets a migraine. No one feels like upset, and we can both have our own creative flow. And that's been really helpful. And I do send out a biannual survey kind of asking everybody at the company to answer anonymously if they feel supported for being like their full self, their authentic self, whether that's taking the religious holidays they want off, their brain, their work-life balance, bringing their dog to work, that kind of stuff. So I do get that feedback twice a year that we look at as a team and try to make adjustments, which is good, I'd say. Try to make adjustments.
Absolutely. I think that reminds me of what Sheila shared around the idea of like investing in your internal structure, your internal culture, which then plays out to your external practices. And back to what Emily shared about wanting people to be able to do their best work and to find out if that's the case and what else needs to be shifted in order to make that happen. I wonder, is there anything, is there anything else anyone would like to share? Maybe the one other thing that I didn't ask you about in advance, and I'm sorry, is the idea of like being part of something, like all of you as leaders within your organizations, who are all doing this work of optimizing your employment practices and your employment culture. And all of you either directly or you've sent other team members to participate in the quarterly community of practice, like you're part of a thing. I'd love to hear, does anybody have any thoughts about that aspect of your work?
We in the Root that we're really excited when we get emails and wanting to join groups and trying to find space and time to make that happen. And so what I'm really liking is that we keep talking about you all and the work we do, and then we're finding other people who are also talking to you and are connected to the work you do. And so even at our 12th year anniversary party that we had on Saturday, we gave a shout out to All Brains, and people knew, many people in the crowd knew who you were and have interacted or been supported by you before. So to me, where we as the root are a relational organization. So it's important for us to have those relationships and not be transactional of just, oh, we had a training and that's great, but to have a relationship with you, Mel, to be able to have things outside of a training, such as groups and other ways to connect and network, is really important for the accountability and follow through for, I think, the work that we're all doing. But just, and people are just, they're really excited and really excited to continue to grow and learn, and to put emphasis on what they already currently have. So I'm just excited that the team is excited and feels like it's been a great relationship building, as well as tools and resources for us to use.
That's amazing, and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to share?
I know after your most recent talk, and I do share out, I should honestly share your newsletter now that like forward it to all company. But after Mel's most recent talk, there is a person I work with, and they just approached me like really quietly, and I know they have a child with autism, and they were like, could you please send me the recording and information? And it felt good to know that I was in a safe enough space with that person that they could like quietly hover around my office and make small talk, and then felt brave enough to ask. And I felt like that was a really good step, because I know that they have, you only get like a tiny little thumbprint of what a person is and their depth. And so the stuff that they might have going on at home is so much bigger and harder to perform your job in the office. So knowing that those resources and they could reach out to you was really good. So
It's amazing.
I mean, I think that we are so lucky that my boss, our co-CEO Blake, is on the board with All Brains Belong. And so we get, we just have the benefit of sort of, always having access and always hearing what's going on. But I think, you know, having him so connected and so vocal about his involvement and always being a champion of your organization made it, when we talked earlier about sort of like people feeling comfortable, like that really sort of, when you have leadership that's like, I am here, I am involved, like this is important, it makes it a lot easier for people to come forward. And I think, especially with something like neurodiversity, which is, I feel like the sort of latest, latest thing to come forward as something that people are talking more about, right? It's not always super visible. It's something that people have sort of held closely. I know so many people, adult women who were just diagnosed with ADHD in their mid 40s and 50s. And so, again, having the openness and the comfort at the leadership level for people to come forward who have been holding on to these things for so long. For me, that's just one of the best ways of being able to again continue to support people. And I love that we've got leadership that's like, walking the walk and continuing to be involved in helping to make our organization a better place.
And modeling like vulnerability. I think that also coming from leadership of, this is my experience, and the being authentic. I think authentic leadership is so important, and you have that at Encore.
I would add to that is just the belonging piece, right? And again, I don't love the word normalizing, but being able to be like, oh yeah, everybody, right, is crinkled in different ways, and just that this is just how humans are. And to just try to be a workplace where there's room for everybody's wrinkles and different ways of being like, oh yeah, I don't like this, I don't like that, like that's fine, right? Let's focus on the stuff we all have to do together and making room for all this belonging, because that is what again, like people are what make a workplace, people are what make a company, right? Or what make an organization. Like there isn't anything else, like just all the other stuff is just tools, and it's humans who use tools, so like just trying to remind people of that all the time, that there's going to be times when folks are like, oh yeah, this part of the job. Like, I can't wrap my mind around it. We're all going to work with you to help you like figure it out, you know, but that is our shared like commitment, right? To make a place where people belong. And that is really, you have made that so visible. Like, your work has made that like just now part of how we think about it all the time. That's, I wouldn't have said that like 10 or 20 years ago, that this is like an employer's responsibility, or right, I probably would have been a bit of a jerk about it, right? Around people got to get with the program, right? But now you just, right, like stuff you didn't know, right? But now we know stuff, and you're just like, oh yeah, we want a place where that is about inclusion and belonging and welcoming, right? This is our philosophy of how we want to be in the world as an organization, and you and your expertise and your team's expertise is part of that for us.
Thank you. That's amazing. Ashley, any parting words before we wrap? I wanted to give you wanted to pass the mic to you one more time.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think I'll mirror what Sheila said. I mean, being able to use your name a minimum twice a week, it really makes people's eyes spark and their brains get going. So you are a topic of conversation every day, and your expertise help us get there. And I think that growth within us will always continue from just that little root that's been planted. So thank you.
And we're doing it together. Like,
Yeah.
I'm constantly learning, our team is constantly learning, and it's just like something comes up, and when you have this lens, as you've all described, I think it supports problem solving around the things that come up in a way that would be different without, incorporating this aspect of the equation. Well, thank you all so much. This was wonderful. I'm really grateful for your insights and being part of this continuous learning journey. I loved that so much. Thank you again. And actually, I'm gonna give me back a visual support. Um, so thank you to Liz Schlegel, Ashley Roberts, Sheila Linton, Emily Grenier, and Claire Whitaker for sharing your wisdom. So much wisdom and so much dopamine, as Olivia says in the chat. Yeah, so much, so much. So all of our panelists went through All Brains Belongs trainings. If you would ever want any more information about our trainings, and actually I'll put a website in the chat where you can learn more about trainings. And there's also a number of free resources about neuro-inclusive employment. There you go. So I'd love to open this up for conversation. Anything that has stood out to anyone that you'd like to share? Oh, Alvar, this is beautiful. Alvar says the hope I get from the bright spotting type of sessions is different. Equally valuable and honestly a relief in the day-to-day onslaught of struggles. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, I think that like we all need to feel like the challenges that we go through, that they are shared and that we're not the only ones. And like that is one part. And you're absolutely right. It's this balance. Like, we need both of these things. We need to like criticize the systemic structures and barriers that make life so difficult for so many of our community, and we need to bright spot alternatives. Anne.
I won't take too much time, but this was so timely because we just actually headed back from Vermont. Our kid lost their job yesterday, and we think a lot of it was a result of just what I've learned so much from this group in just the short time I've been here. And this was just so timely because it just gives me hope that there's places that really do embrace, the good, like, and what needs to happen in workplaces. And I think that eventually they'll find these places, and there just should be so many more of them. And you need to be probably multiplied by 1 million so you can change the world. So I just thank you again, because it's incredible stuff that you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Anne, and I'm sorry that your child has been disrespected in this way. And I think that actually, Lizzie, I do know the date of this. If you can there's a Brain Club from February of 2024, Reimagining Work, I think it's called. One of the panelists, it like has really like stayed with me all this time, where he talks about when something doesn't work out at work, a lot of times we tell ourselves that it's our fault. But what the panelist talks about is like really it's like any relationship. It has to work for both sides. And almost always it's just like this is a poor fit. This is a poor fit for my needs. But when you don't know what your needs are, you end up in situations that are not a good fit for you and you don't know. You're like, "Oh, it's a job. I'm gonna like I hope it plays out differently than the last job." But like without necessarily what am I looking for? And I think that the cues of safety are really important. Like we all watch this panel, right? Like we got vibe. We all picked up vibe from these panelists. Like, and if you go into a job interview and you feel stressed out and there are no cues of safety, a lot of times we tell ourselves, like, oh, it's because it's a job interview. I'm going to feel better when I get the job. It's like, no, you might not feel better when you get the job because this isn't a safe environment for you. No, thanks, Lizzie, for putting that in the chat. Brian says it's someone who struggled with past workspaces and finding a new job. One thing that's important is recognizing how these places can be harmful, right? And how difficult finding a good neurodiverse job is and being supportive. Yeah, and so recognizing that being in a job that is a poor fit for your needs is harmful is really, really important. So anytime it's tempting to be like, why don't you just suck up and do suck it up and do the things, like, because that's harmful for your nervous system and your health. Oh, Irene, yeah, I mean, just it's heartbreaking. Irene shared in the chat, my kid said I was fired for being me. Yeah, like devastating, devastating. And it's just the idea of when you can reframe that from like, these are not my people, this environment is not what I need and where I want to be, then I mean, it doesn't make it easy by any means when you lose a job, but like it's the idea of like a little bit of insulating peach fuzz of like, those people, they lost out on me. It's not that there's something wrong and broken about me. These are just people who don't get me. Anybody else want to share anything that has stood out to them about the panel? Hi, Sierra.
Hi. One thing I really liked was seeing how the like employment training seemed like it spread out to the community at large. And so like like treating customers differently and the example of like thinking about how to direct people to quieter spaces in a restaurant. I think it just goes to show how when we kind of create some of this neuro inclusion, it really does spread out and create this kind of whole community of neuro inclusion. And I think we can do that each with ourselves too, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think that like a less, I love the way that you framed this in the like affirmative, positive way. I'm going to flip it and say that like the opposite is also true. When you don't meet your staff's needs, they are going to have a qualitatively different opportunity to serve the community and serve your clients and customers or your patients or whatever. When people don't have their needs met, they cannot do their work. In next week's panel, Connie Beal, our board chair, is here in the audience. So Connie's a panelist next week. And Connie, there's this amazing thing you say. I think it's actually the end of the panel because we left it as like a mic drop moment. You say something like, I don't know if you remember what you said, but it was like, it was basically like, you can't struggle for survival and do your work. Do you remember that?
Something to do. Sorry, I was eating.
Sorry, I like start talking about you while you're eating.
You didn't all see me, but I was like drinking out of a cereal bowl, and
Amazing.
anyway, it'll come to me. But yeah, it was. I think that you can't. We were talking about the brain. You can't go beyond the tunnel, that like tunnel vision of the most basic thing you need, right? If you don't have your most basic need met, you'll never go to the next thing because it will take up all of your. I think we talk about it as like the tyranny of the moment. where like the thing you don't have is the thing you have to focus on because it's so essential, whether it's safety or food or light or, whatever the thing is. And anyway, I'm just so impressed with the leadership in this space. And I think that's such a takeaway for me. I was listening and hearing our leaders, our business leaders, really stepping into the space and the role of bringing this in, and that's where it begins. And from there, it's like it catches like a fire. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. And I hope that you will join us next week, taking on our transformation to transforming communities. And we'll have an equally powerful panel to enjoy together. So have a great week, everyone. Thank you. Bye.